Alright, let's finish recording this so we can continue playing Baldur's Gate. Sync up here on my fourth playthrough. May we never sit in silence for a long while afterwards. In the unforgivable summer of 2020, J. Cole released Snow on the Bluff. It came in response to No Name tweeting about how, while poor black people across America were facing the line of fire in defense of the future George Floyds and Ahmaud Arbery's, the top-selling rappers of the world didn't even see fit to release a tweet. Generally, I don't submit to this idea that celebrities tweeting and using their voices is as consequential as we'd hope. But it seemed like a reasonable thing to be upset about. None of the two prominent, conscious rappers seemed ready to say anything, and in the form of protest music, it was Atlanta's Lil Baby who gave us the bigger picture. A compelling but mostly forgotten song that, at the time, hit like a rock, primarily because no other projectiles seemed headed our way. J. Cole saw fit to not respond to the world as it melted before him, not write of politicians lying about COVID, or the police deleting unarmed people of color, or socially inept computer science losers gaining control of global human interaction. Instead, the most urgent thing for him to talk about was No Name's tweet. It was to take attention from, well, everything and say, hey, I guess I feel guilty, I can do better, but you should be nicer about it, Mrs. No Name. Sync up here. This, I suspect, is going to be a long one. One thing I've been thinking about a lot: what the hell happened to all the protest music? Fascism and Jim Crow met its match in the likes of Woody Guthrie. The poor treatment of veterans was at once highlighted and blindsided by Bruce Springsteen. Police brutality and American lust got roped into staring contests in the 2010s with All Right and This Is America. In the early 2000s, the last time the soulless son of a rich man stumbled his way into power and was subsequently appalled by the responsibility, the music world reacted strongly to everything that unfurled from the political sphere. A lot of it was mournfully pro-Bush, but records like Green Day's classic, American Idiot, gave people words and sounds to be at once furious and dazed. Holiday shamed them for their apathy. Wake Me Up sympathized with them for it. And the title track was a screaming reminder that they weren't the crazy ones. And I'm not stupid, for the most part. I'm aware protest music still lives on. Seb Lowe's stunning No One to Kill in the Sky and Armand Hammer's Moonbow continue to fight the proverbial good fight. But where are the voices on the radio calling out as the world bleeds internally? Where or who is our Bob Dylan? Why were so many voices of opposition seemingly forced underground? Of course, this is the bias of the present. Even during the time of George Bush and the war in Iraq, most people with things to lose kept their mouths shut. Lindsay Ellis, in her video on protest music, spoke of Madonna, for instance, who circumcised her music video when she saw what happened to the Dixie Chicks. The Dixie Chicks, who didn't even release a protest song, but instead condemned Bush at a concert in the UK, only to come home and find their music blacklisted from radios and death threats bursting open their mailboxes. But what song are we to sing as the US and Israel rip soil and memories from the blistered hands of Palestinians? What do we scream to remind us we aren't crazy as people's wrists bleed from handcuffs for the crime of not speaking English? Definitionally, an underground artist cannot be the voice of the people, so I guess my final question would be, if we are so intent on not using it, do the people even need a voice? May we never sit in silence for a long while afterwards. In the first pitch black winter of 2025, Snoop Dogg and Rick Ross and professional joke Soulja Boy performed at the 2025 Crypto Ball. I really hope you can hear me over these beeps. It's louder here than I thought it would be. It was an event honoring the newly inaugurated Donald Trump, according to NPR, billing him as the first crypto president. A sentence which means absolutely nothing and everything all at once. It is worth remembering that almost exactly 8 years earlier, Snoop Dogg took to Instagram to denounce anyone that was even thinking about performing for Trump, stating he was waiting, preparing to roast whichever one of us jigaboo ass niggas would be the first. After the Crypto Bowl, professional mistake Soulja Boy responded first, stating, "They paid me a bag." Snoop Dogg then later posted a video on social media smoking a joint in his car, saying, "We gotta learn how to pick each other up instead of pulling each other down, and all out till you ball out or till you fall out." Because in his decaying, weed puppeteered brain, that has anything to do with literally anything. I wanted to write this essay after listening to Vince Staples', man, I don't know, nigga, new album, Cry Baby. One of the things that really struck me from that album and from Staples' interviews is the fact that the man, the proverbial powers that be, won. They beat us. They've been beat us. There will still be tracks that speak to a time and still get radio play and put on Spotify's curated playlists, Bad Bunny for instance, but for the most part, those days seem vanished. And speaking of Bad Bunny, it is seductive to pretend we still have an active voice of the people fighting against oppression. Kendrick and Bad Bunny's Super Bowl performances were incredibly political in nature. A few years before that, Eminem took a knee on that massive stage after rapping Lose Yourself. But make no mistake, there can be no meaningful protest or nuanced conversation on a stage like the Super Bowl. It's too massive. The NFL is too deeply entrenched in the bosom of the American giant. Even Samuel L. Jackson, playing Uncle Sam himself, telling Kendrick that America isn't interested in his blackness, even that is trying to sell you something. It is about the most provocative thing that can be sold on that stage, but even it is a ploy for your attention, not your heart. You remember, a few years earlier, that same stage did not let Mr. Lamar say we hate the murderous police. I lost my mind when Donald Trump got re-elected. I'm embarrassed to say that. I am Nigerian. I know better than any American what the futility of a political enterprise looks like. My grandparents were raised under colonial masters, and my parents were raised under military leaders, generals and soldiers, forcefully, sometimes violently, taking power from elected, albeit openly corrupt leaders, then promising the people that in X number of years they would give them a free election. Only, of course, later deciding that that was an unnecessary endeavor. And then another military general would take power from them via coup and falsely promise to grant free election, and then the cycle would roll downhill for decades. We see that now with Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso. It is a joke, surely. Nearly all African politics seems to be, and my parents unconsciously instilled that political apathy in me. I spent my younger years thinking it was best we kept our heads down and made imperceptible bubbles of light in the shadows of small men made massive. So when Trump got re-elected, I remember being kind of grossed out by how upset my friends were. Some of them came to school almost crying, and I was offended by their hubris. People have real problems, I thought. You, the educated, the housed, the clothed, you'll probably be fine. I've seen suffering, and surely this isn't it. When I went into a depressive episode, I told myself it was the grim weather. I told myself it was me missing my family, or the self-hatred of my youth recontextualizing itself once again. In hindsight, it seems so painfully obvious what it was. It is no coincidence that, to free myself of that quagmire, the song I played on loop was All You Fascists Bound to Lose by Woody Guthrie. I remember playing it and singing it, even when I didn't believe it. I just kept singing it and singing it and singing it, as if maybe I was praying, asking dead men for, if not help, then at the very least understanding. The country I used to see as the promised land was twisting slowly and painfully into the homeland I grew up hating, grew up begging to escape. What was the point of fuck the police, of changes? How can it be that all we are able to do is wait 4 years? Has it always been this way? Fela Kuti blew into his saxophone and sang his heart out, and his country sank deeper still after he died. Kendrick told the world that the police could shoot us dead in the streets and we would still live on, and the police seemed to take that as a challenge. Is this the lesson? That our voices too are but content for the man? God, may we never sit in silence for a long while afterwards. What a terrible fucking script. Okay, we're in the last stretch now. Come on, Baldur's Gate, here we come. I hope to God you're still in focus. I'm gonna give you a minute. I'm gonna give you a minute so you can be in focus. I went to get my book. Just are you in focus now? Are you okay? Okay, all right. I'm trusting you, Google Pixel. In the last pitch black winter of 2025, Nicki Minaj gave a tweet at the UN headquarters in New York. In Nigeria, she read, churches have been burned, families have been torn apart simply because of how they pray. Nicki Minaj was talking out of her ass, all 16 square miles of it. The attacks she was talking about exactly are hard to name because of the nature of just how insecure Nigeria is. There are killings by unorganized jihadists, by Fulani herdsmen, Boko Haram, ritualists, etc. They have and continue to attack all kinds of communities and tribes and ethnic groups and religions throughout West Africa, not necessarily just Christians. According to the BBC, the very week she made that asinine speech, 2 people were killed in an attack on a church in Kwara State, while a group of 25 Muslim girls were abducted from their school. Minaj has long since been an outspoken Republican, but netizens suspect she's cozying up to Trump in an attempt to extract pardons for the pedophiles she's enamored with. The president, using her as a rhetorical springboard, promised to send his troops guns a-blazing to Nigeria, and he did. On Christmas Day, he announced he'd sent strikes into Sokoto State, despite all the boasting and grandstanding. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, this will provide at best a temporary setback for the supposed Christian killing organizations lurking in the area. Hip-hop, like punk and folk and Afrobeat, is inherently rebellious in nature. More than it is competitive, more than it is poetic, hip-hop is the sound of the bound, looking inwards and asking, but what do you believe? When you listen to the artist that birthed it, Jill Heron Scott, The Last Poets, there can be no question as to what songs like Run Nigga and The Revolution Will Not Be Televised are about. Rap is at its foundation a refusal. In a way, more so than folk or punk music, because it is a group of people who have been historically silenced, opening their mouths and literally speaking. Rap doesn't need hooks or melodies or harmonies, nigga. God. And the density that allows is incredibly powerful. At least I thought it was. The US did not need Nicki Minaj to drop capital F freedom on Nigeria, but it's safe to say she was at least a catalyst, a face with which to launder their tomfoolery. Snoop Dogg jiving for Uncle Sam was him validating the administration, we're at a point where not only is hip-hop powerless to end people's suffering, it is being used to reinforce it. Look no further than Dax, who, believe it or not, was once a burgeoning voice in the YouTube rap scene. But once he discovered the amount of money that could be made from relaxing into the current of bigotry, he was dance monkey dancing for Tom McDonald before we could say Jack Robinson. I'm failing to find a silver lining here, like I always do. I want people to leave my writing having felt, if not hopeful, then at least curious. But I don't know where I'm supposed to take this. Vince Staples' excellent new album was so refreshing because it was a mainstream-ish rapper putting our rage and disillusionment into something we could chant and rock our heads to. I'm partial especially to the track White Flag, which is this world-weary admission of failure, of the inevitable degradation of love and noble intentions. The song is all that, but it's also an acknowledgement that whether or not we fight, there will be something worth fighting for. Oh, it's raining. That's why it got dark. I wonder why in the first place we look to our biggest artists to make songs of protest. My entire YouTube pseudo career has been me parroting the thing I said on that Mavi album. Art cannot save us. So why do we keep wanting it to? Why does it hurt to see hip-hop bend the knee to Uncle Sam and every other manifestation of the Kwensu Ocha? What manner of protest art could even be applicable in the 2020s? The weirdos we used to stuff in lockers and toilets control the social fabric of humanity. The people we foolishly gave power to have gone out of their way to degrade everything good in the world. Billion-dollar companies are on the loose like rabid dogs. The sky is porous, melting from the heat of our self-induced apocalypse. People have been saying it's the end times since people have been people, but now it actually feels true. And what is art supposed to do about that? If hip-hop is supposed to be a weapon, who is it to slay first? And what use is a sword against the sky? Things Fall Apart is the great Nigerian novel. See it as... Oh shit! Things Fall Apart is the great Nigerian novel. See it as our equivalent of your To Kill a Mockingbird or Beloved. Mournfully, it has been banned a few times in Nigeria and most curiously, Malaysia? Which y'all doing over there? But in 2012, schools in Texas challenged the book because they were scared it was teaching critical race theory or some shit. A perfect example of how even our protest art can very easily no longer belong to us. But I digress. I, like every Nigerian, read Things Fall Apart as a teenager, and I mostly forgot about its specific details and sentences. But one day, I randomly opened it and stumbled upon this line that's been ricocheting in my head for the better part of a year. I got this copy of the book from a beautiful white woman who used to live with my close friend, and she moved out and she sold it. I didn't own a copy of Things Fall Apart before that. I bought it from a white woman, bro. Isn't that crazy? She was pretty though. I'll read the entire passage because I think it applies. When he killed Oduche in the fight over the land, he fled to Aninta to escape the wrath of the earth. This was about 8 days after the fight, because Oduche had not died immediately from his wounds. It was on the 7th day that he died, but everybody knew that he was going to die, and Aneto got his belongings together in readiness to flee. But the Christians had told the white man about the accident, and he sent his... The fuck is this word, nigga? And he sent his kotma to catch Aneto. He was imprisoned with all the leaders of his family. In the end, Oduche died, and Aneto was taken to Umuru and hanged. The other people were released, but even now, they have not found the mouth with which to tell of their suffering. The two men sat in silence for a long while afterwards. May we never sit in silence for a long while afterwards, because, unlike the people with Aneto, our suffering is almost entirely precedented. It is not the end of the world, because the world has ended before. Many times, it ended when the Portuguese washed up on the shores of the Senegal River. It ended when Columbus thought he'd found the other end of Asia. It ended when MLK drove down to Memphis to protest with black sanitation workers. Yet here we are still. And unlike the people with Aneto, we have long since found the mouth with which to tell of our suffering. The more I think about it, the more absurd it becomes, this question of what good can hip-hop do in these times. Questions like that exonerate the Snoop Doggs and the Nicki Minaj's and the J. Cole's. Because yes, a good rap album on its own will not cure us. But is that any reason to cozy up to the powers that be? Surely, art is not for saving the world. We are. Art, breathtaking, ever kaleidoscoping art, ever vulnerable art, is for reminding us we are worth saving. May we never sit in silence for a long while afterwards. If you're not in focus, woohoo! If you're not in focus, nigga,